On February 10, 1798, Papal Rome was invaded during the French Revolution by General Louis-Alexandre Berthier, and Pope Pius VI was demanded to renounce his temporal sovereignty, but he refused. On February 15, 1798, the Papal Monarchy of Rome was declared the Republic of Rome. And on February 20, 1798, Pope Pius VI was placed under arrest because he refused to renounce his temporal sovereignty, and was exiled to France, where he died the following year on August 29, 1799. In 1917, the highest mountain peak in Alaska, named Denali, which means the Great One, was renamed Mount McKinley after U.S. President William McKinley. William McKinley was a brevet major in the Union Army during the U.S. Civil War, and was the last of the Union officers to serve as U.S. President. As U.S. President, William McKinley favored a protective tariff, restriction on immigration, and raising the age limit on child labor. He supported statehood for Western territories, construction of the Panama Canal, and the open-door policy toward China. Furthermore, he condemned Southern laws, Jim Crow segregation laws, which kept Black Americans from the polls to vote. And he declared war on Spain. During the presidency of William McKinley, on the anniversary of the invasion of Rome, when the papal monarchy was declared a republic on February 15, 1798. On February 15, 1898, the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 in behalf of our republican system was challenged in the Western Hemisphere through the Roman Catholic monarchy of Spain. And on the anniversary of that event, the political and religious liberty and freedom in the Western Hemisphere for the peace, safety, and happiness of the Republic of the United States was threatened by the Roman Catholic monarchy of Spain, who undermined the civil liberty of the citizens of the United States and menaced the United States during its war with Cuba. During the conflict between Spain and Cuba, the USS Maine, sent to patrol the area, sank by a mine explosion in the Havana harbor on February 15, 1898. The U.S. resorted to the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, and declared war against Spain, on April 25, 1898, which led to Cuba's independence. Before war was declared against Spain, U.S. President McKinley was pressured by European nations to permit Pope Leo XIII to mediate an armistice between Spain and Cuba, which would occur during the Easter season. But, President McKinley rejected the papal solution of mediation during the Easter season for peace in the Western Hemisphere. The decision of President McKinley is a milestone, a symbolic peak of the independence and freedom of the sovereignty of the United States of America's republican form of democracy in the Western Hemisphere. According to a speech by Abraham Lincoln, U.S. citizens are under the government of a system of political institutions conducing more essentially to the ends of civil and religious liberty than any of which the history of former times tells us. Throughout the history of the loss of the Pope's temporal sovereignty, and afterwards, the Pope of Rome has identified the French Revolution and arbitrary civil governments as the cause for its loss of temporal sovereignty, that is to say, the loss of his civil and ecclesiastical authority over other governments of nations and states by his political and religious power, and a need to safeguard against another revolution like the French Revolution against the papacy. And after the loss of temporal sovereignty, dates and names appear important to the Roman Catholic Church in an attempt to heal itself of its loss of ecclesiastical authority over the world, in part, by restoration of its power and authority on dates as to continue to the next day from the loss, as if the loss did not occur. An example, on February 10, 1798, Papal Rome was invaded during the French Revolution and Pope Pius VI was demanded to renounce his temporal sovereignty, but did not. Then Rome was declared a republic, and he was arrested and died in exile. Yet, on February 11, 1929, as if the next day, the temporal sovereignty of the Pope was restored by the city-state system of the Vatican through the Lateran Accords under Pope Pius XI. After the death of Pius XI on February 10, 1939, during the inauguration of his successor, Pope Pius XII, he was called Father of Princes and Kings, ruler of the world, and vicar of our Savior on earth, 6 months before World War II. This was an effort to express that the temporal sovereignty was lost and restored by the line of Pius from Pope Pius VI to Pope Pius XII. Secret talks favoring the Pope's desired mediation between the U.S. and Cuba began at the time that U.S. President Barack Obama visited the Vatican on March 27, 2014, to discuss foreign policy, climate, poverty, and discrimination. During the invasion of Rome, Pope Pius VI was placed under arrest because he refused to renounce his temporal sovereignty, and was carried away in exile and died in France the following year on August 29, 1799. Yet, upon secret negotiations for papal mediation, on Sunday, August 30, 2015, as if the day following the death of Pius VI, U.S. President Barack Obama renamed by executive order the highest peak in the United States from Mount McKinley to Denali, meaning the Great One. President Obama said it was a great honor to meet with the Pope of Rome, and in the time of the 150th anniversary of the U.S. Civil War, he was incredibly moved by his message of inclusion. In 1864, during the U.S. Civil War, the Roman Catholic monarchy of Mexico had overthrown the Republic, and Pope Pius IX pursued restoration of papal temporal sovereignty in the Western Hemisphere by a rival liberty to the United States liberty, which included ending discrimination against Native Americans. The timing of papal mediation and the Mount McKinley name change worked together to advance the pursuit of temporal sovereignty during the papal visit, which was subtly and subversively exercised by the Pope of Rome during his speech before the U.S. Congress. It was successful upon the failed attempts during the U.S. Civil War in 1864, and because of war with Spain in 1898. In the 150th anniversary of the U.S. Civil War, papal mediation between the U.S. and Cuba makes U.S. President Obama a great one for the cause of the papacy, and no doubt, the name change from Mount McKinley back to Denali, the Great One, is ascribed to him by the Vatican for his decision and effort to let the Pope mediate. The name change was announced 7 days before the anniversary of the assassination of U.S. President William McKinley at the Temple of Music on September 6, 1901, by an anarchist named Leon Czolgosz, the son of Roman Catholic parents. On September 14, President William McKinley died. He was the last of the U.S. Civil War Union officers to serve as U.S. President. The Lateran Accords between Italy and Vatican City-State grant the papal monarchy of Rome its desire to mediate between nations if all parties agree, and to have any title he desires, which was exercised by Pius XII, when he was proclaimed ruler of the world, and vicar of our Savior on earth. The original Latin meaning for vicar is substitute. By the encyclical Caritas in Veritate, the pursuit of mediation is of the papal system of subsidiarity, solidarity, and fraternity. According to the encyclical, papal mediation is an intermediate form of assistance between nations that shows humility in pursuing and expanding his temporal sovereignty because he is also under his system. It shows an aspect of him as a subsidiary of nations. This name change is an example of what Pope Benedict XVI calls a new trajectory of thinking, which he says is needed in order to arrive at a better understanding of the implications of our being one family. What is implied in being one family was expressed during the 1939 inauguration of Pius XII, that he and all popes are entitled, Father of princes and kings, therefore presidents, ruler of the world, and vicar of Christ. Thereby, the Pope entitles himself as the global father of kingdoms, nations, and states, which are subject to the political power and civil authority of canon law. Therefore, what appears to be a great political move in restoring relations with Cuba through papal mediation, seemingly a progression of cooperation in solidarity, was really a trajectory aiming towards subsidiarity under the city-state system of the Vatican according to the worldwide integration movement of Roman Catholicism. During the 2015 joint session of Congress, Pope Francis sought protection for papal temporal sovereignty. Notably, Pope Francis indicated his pursuit of temporal sovereignty over the United States of America in his speech, saying,
"This year marks the 150th anniversary of the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, the guardian of liberty, who labored tirelessly that this nation under God might have a new birth of freedom. Building a future of freedom requires love of the common good and cooperation in a spirit of subsidiarity and solidarity."
According to the encyclical Caritas in Veritate, Chapter 6, Section 7, Paragraph 1, what Pope Francis means by his common good message is that he wants to establish his Vatican city-state system as the city of God on earth, which integrates nations and states into his political-religious system under his canon law. And when Pope Francis spoke before the U.S. Congress saying,
"You are asked to protect, by means of the law, the image and likeness fashioned by God on every human life."
He means the U.S. Congress's responsibility as a protector of his impinging integral system of religious and political power, and ecclesiastical and civil authority as the Vicar of Christ, the Son of God. For as the Vicar or substitute of Christ, the Son of God, he is also an image and likeness of Christ. And nevertheless, his sovereign power and authority pursued over all nations and states conflict with religious liberty for individuals, which liberty is secured by the United States as a blessing. Considering the war with Spain in 1898, the sovereignty of the United States in the Western Hemisphere, and the Easter peace solution of the Pope of Rome as an alternative to war, according to the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, the United States did not accept nor wanted the Easter peace solution of the Pope of Rome, nor war with Spain. Nevertheless, political powers of Europe should not have made it an alternative in order to give an opportunity to the pursuit of papal temporal sovereignty, which was lost to the Republic of Rome in 1798. Yet, in agreeing to papal mediation, and changing the name, Mount McKinley back to Denali in an act of justice during the 150th anniversary of the U.S. Civil War, show that U.S. President Barak Obama upheld papal Rome's pursuit of temporal sovereignty.